Welcome to the Brooklyn Podcast with yours truly, Anthony Puccio, my co-host, Colin Helwig, and we have a special guest today, Sharif Phillips-Keaton of Nets Wire. Sharif, how you doing?
Anthony, Colin, nice to be here with you guys. Pretty good. I know we got a little pre-show banter going on, but time to talk some Nets and hopefully not cry as we talk about it. So,
what are the vibes like down at Barclays Center? We got 13 games left. What are the fans feeling? What has it been looking like? I know the Celtics played there recently, so must have been a lot of green, huh?
Yeah, I mean, Colin would know. I mean, pretty much any big name away team comes there, that's who they're cheering for. The Celtics came, they were shouting MVP for Jason Tatum. I mean, Steph Curry is Steph Curry. So, but I imagine like the in-person vibes are good. The online / Twitter vibes sound pretty divided. So that's my take on that.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, obviously, the plane is out of reach. They have the fifth worst record, so they're doing what they need to do. I think Steve Lichtenstein called it the ethical way of tanking that they're doing. So we have a handful of games left. There really isn't much to talk about, but what can be, I guess, salvaged in this final month of the season? Colin, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot. I feel like we say ethical way of tanking. It's just a nice way of saying the not so great way of tanking, if we're being honest with ourselves. But hey, if the ping pong balls fall the right way, and it's because the Nets did the right thing and, played competitive, then we'll absolutely take it. But it's a real bummer that Cam Thomas is not going to be playing any more basketball this year, because I feel like my answer a couple days ago would have been Cam Thomas is the thing to salvage, because he has missed so much of the season, really that big bulk right in the middle. And this was the year where we were going to be able to finally get enough footage where can we figure out, is this guy Lou Williams or is he James Harden? Odds are he's somewhere in between both of those. But this was kind of his year. And, we were waiting for him to come back, and then he did come back, and then blip. On Saturday, we found out about that the hamstring is nagging him again. So that's kind of taken some of the wind out of the sails. I guess the impromptu next answer would have to be other young guys who are in a similar position. Noah Clowney just came back from an injury. Let's see what he can put together in the last half of the year. Same goes to Day'Ron Sharpe. I thought he looked great against Boston last night. That sequence where he had the block up against on the baseline on Pritchard and then ran back for the three. I saw him running down the court, and he got his feet set, and I thought maybe he was going to lose his balance, and I thought maybe he'd pass out of it, but no, he pulled it and he hit it. So very much intrigued to see how those guys do. Just the guys where you kind of have a feeling that they'll be back next year, because we're already at a point in a season where we all know the good stuff that's going to come for this team. It's going to come next year. There's really not much else going on.
Yeah, we'll touch on Cam Thomas in a little bit, who's out for the season with a hamstring injury. What do you got for me, Sharif?
I pretty much agree with everything Colin said. I think at this point, you've seen what you're going to see out of, Cam Thomas the rest of the year. So now it's just, and I guess this would be more of like a behind the scenes thing of like, how much is he going to get in free agency? Obviously, he's a restricted free agent, so it's a little easier for Brooklyn to bring him back. But that'll depend on his price tag. And, you're obviously evaluating some of the younger guys like Noah. I'll put Jalen Wilson in there, even though I'm not sure about his standing for next year, especially if the Nets are going to start adding at least a couple players from this upcoming draft. I would like to see Nick Claxton play a little better. I was listening to, the most recent episode of your pod, and you brought up how Nick Claxton was playing coming out of the All-Star break. And granted, he's not going to block 5 shots a game, but it's just like that game in Boston. And I want to say it was either the game against Atlanta or the game against, or I think he sat the game against Boston when they were in Brooklyn. But it's just the highs and lows for Nick is just disappointing to me. So I would like to see if he can at least finish the season strong.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think that these competitive losses are great, especially when you're rocking with 5 guys that were probably playing in the G League last year. But just from a basketball perspective, I think if you're Sean Marks, if you're the front office, you're looking to see, like it's an audition of some sorts for these younger guys, the Tyrese Martins of the world, and you're in Zaire Williams, whoever else. I mean, I could probably name the whole roster, and they would be applicable to this. But who might be worth sticking around for the long haul. Like I can't remember who came out with a report, but it was like the Nets are cleaning house this summer. Maybe one of you guys remember who wrote this piece, but either way, it was something along those lines.
I think we got a text about that. I don't know if it's been published.
Well, Nets might clean house next summer. We don't know, but
One way or
either way, probably not going to be a lot of guys around, but maybe somebody sticks out in these last 13, 14 games. Um, I don't know if they can necessarily salvage anything, but look, even as Lichtenstein wrote, like these guys are all playing for their careers, so we'll see who sticks around next summer. Whoever is going to write that report, we'll be talking about that soon.
Mm-hmm.
Colin, you touched on Cam Thomas again. We mentioned he's out for the year with a hamstring injury. This season was really plagued by this hamstring. We didn't get to see him too much. This is one of the bright spots, at least personally speaking, for myself, and I think a lot of Nets fans would agree, going into this season. Knowing that they were going to tank, at least we had Cam Thomas to watch. We didn't really get the full experience with him. Finishes the season averaging 24 points and 4 assists, 35% from three, 44% from the floor. Sharif, what have you liked from him this year? What have you disliked? And what is your ideal contract for Cam Thomas?
I would say what I dislike is obviously how much he wasn't available. And I mean, obviously, soft tissue injuries like hamstring, and I think Cam alluded to it when we got a chance to talk to him. It's hard to like play around that or train around that because, soft tissue injuries, like you could pull your calf and next thing you know, you tear your Achilles. Not that it's always connected that way, but it was just tough to see him I think he only played like 25 games, but he had his best season numbers wise. And I think the only thing that was down was his shooting percentages slightly, but it sucks with, the game in Chicago. That was probably his best game of the season. And you saw that playmaking ability and that willingness to make the pass to the open teammate. His ideal contract is going to be interesting because he's coming off his most injury-plagued season in restricted free agency in a offseason where there presumably won't be teams that could pay him a lot of money. I've always said since there was talk of whether the Nets were going to, extend his rookie contract, if you can get him for less than $25 million a year, I think that's great for where he's at in his career right now. I just think when there was some talk of like possibly like 30, I don't think there was any real noise behind that. And I mean, I know some people compare Cam Thomas to Jalen Green, and you leave that what you will if you believe whoever's the better player. But at this point, I think I remember writing the Nets are going to have the most cap space this offseason by far based on what they practically can do to create that cap space. And then the next team is Detroit, who's like going to have like about like $70 million less. So I would say somewhere between 20 to 25, even if it's the kind of thing where maybe he gets more money towards the end of it and then maybe try to extend off of that and try to like get more money if he plays better. But yeah, that's pretty much where I would peg him at.
Yeah, I think it's very similar, and they're very different players, but Nick Claxton last year was coming off 2 stud defensive seasons, but you still didn't really know kind of what kind of a player he was going to develop into, where you could kind of see there's a world where he can be that all defensive center to the point where he is one of the best centers in the league. But at the same time, it wasn't always 100% sustainable. This year, it's been a lot more inconsistent, but looking back last year, there were still flashes of inconsistency. He wasn't able to put it together for a long, long time. It was more so really coming there at the end. And I remember hearing the benchmark for Claxton was 4 years, $20 million, and that's exactly what he got. So it seemed like the Nets, they didn't overpay, they didn't underpay, they hit it right on the nail. So I think that's kind of similar kind of player in terms of potential. What could you get at him? That's a good place to start. It's around 4 years and $20 million.
It's hard to judge when, especially with Cam's case, like it doesn't feel, one, it's not a big sample size, and two, it wasn't for a very long stretch. It seemed like it was like play 5-10 games here and then hamstring injury, like play another 5 games, hamstring injury, like out until the All-Star break. and then it happened again. So it's really hard for me to say. I thought this recent stretch, his playmaking and his passing was a little bit better. I think Nets fans are really excited that he had 10 assists in that one game, but it's hard for me to say like Cam looked so much better here or there because Cam is a walking bucket. He does that and has done that and shown that since he came into the league. So like I'm not impressed or disappointed. I'm just disappointed from a fan's perspective that I didn't really get to watch him play a lot of games. With that being said, though, back to my point of him being a walking bucket, somebody that could score at any given moment with the ball in his hands. I'm hoping you're looking at 4 years, 85. Fair? You're looking at maybe 21.5 mil per year for somebody like him. I think he was averaging his most assists per game this year, which was like 3.84. He's shown that he can be I guess I don't want to use the word playmaker. Like he is a playmaker. It's just I think the bigger question is, can he be a point guard in the NBA? And I don't think that he's a point guard. Sharif, what do you think?
I agree with you. I think Cam's obviously we know what his bread and butter is. It's pretty much scoring the ball. And I mean, for what we can talk about, whether it's his efficiency or, the shots that he tends to take, the one thing we can all agree on is that he can pretty much score against anybody. And that's a valuable skill in the NBA, especially when you're a guard. Like obviously if he was like a bigger player, then at least if he wasn't as efficient or not as good of a scorer, you could be like, well, you could probably defend a little better. Yeah, it's just I've always wondered if he could play point guard, and this was back when Jock Vaughn became the coach, and then it went to KO, and then now with Jordy. I've always wondered if Cam could even show a little bit of like being able to play point guard and not get totally exposed. In my opinion, that even if he really never changed his numbers, just the ability to be able to put the ball in his hands, and then instead of having another small guard next to him, like you think of now, him and D'Angelo Russell, or earlier this season, him and Dennis Schroeder, like that hurts your defense. But if you could have Cam as the point guard and then maybe put a bigger, wing size two guard, I think that really helps your defense. And then he's really your only average to below average defender. But yeah, I agree with you, Pooch. I don't think he can be a point guard the entire game, but I do think he showed he can be that in stretches.
Yeah. I mean, I think the point guard thing is a very natural thing to wonder about with his game because his shot making ability, he creates so much gravity. This is just how it works when you're an elite scorer. You're a great scorer. All right, the double's going to come. What are you going to do now? You're going to drive, and then are you going to find your opponent, your teammate who's out of the wing for the wide open three, or are you going to force the shot over two guys, or maybe walk into a turnover? There's a right play and there's a wrong play right there. And the right play is to, when you have your shot going, and if they're crowding in on you, then to make the right pass and you swing it. And we've all seen them do it. It goes around the 3-point line, and then it ends up in Cam Johnson's hand in the corner, and he can hit that all day. So that's the kind of progression that you've been waiting to see from him. And it's been in bursts this year. Like that Chicago game was phenomenal. Like whether it was kicking out for threes or he was penetrating the defense and he was finding Trendon or Dayron like in the dunker spot, it was picture perfect, and it's a hard thing to do because it's such a feel thing when the defense is closing in on you and it's like, all right, is it time for me to pass, or are they leaving me just enough spot where I can hit this shot that I can make 100 times out of 100 times? So I think the point guard thing is very much the avenue that if he wants to be an elite player, I think then his game invites him to be a point guard, and he needs to accept that invite that his shot allows, and that kind of leads him into becoming a point guard. I worded that very poorly, but hopefully you guys understand what I'm getting at.
No, you're right. You're right. Being able to walk in the game and get a bucket enables you to attract double teams and triple teams and dish it off. I think he even said it like there's a quote, maybe you guys can clarify, but he said something along the lines of like, I would have more assists if my guys are making the shots. Like it was like something like that. I don't want to misquote. I don't want to misquote him.
No, that's very along the
That was
lines.
roughly
To paraphrase, like he's kind of saying like my assist numbers would be up if we had more.
I do think an underrated thing people don't talk about in his development is how much he could use someone else that just takes the pressure off of him. He's never had that. at all, really. And I'm not going to count when Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were there and he was playing like once every 20 games.
Are you
No,
talking about like
because
the scoring load or just like passing?
More so just to create defensive attention where he isn't just constantly getting those doubles. And now you can make the argument that like he needs to see those doubles and he needs to pass out of them and learn how to manipulate the defense to develop more. But at the same time, if you want to just judge him for what he is, a scorer, he's going to have a hard time scoring when the defense can just key onto him and no one else is there.
I understand where you're getting at. It's also difficult, I think, in this era. Like there aren't really many like true point guards by traditional standards, right? Like it's really you're a ball handler, you're a wing, or you're a big. Like so,
Yeah.
I think Sharif kind of mentioned it. Like he's somewhere in between that like ball handler range, but also uh that wing range too. Like he could play the one, he could play the two, he could even play the three if they want to go small.
Yeah. And I mean, like you pretty much hit it on the head, Pooch. Like even like when you think of like who the best point guards are, at least when we define them by position, like you think of SGA. SGA leads the league in scoring. He's averaging like 5 or 6 assists a game. You even think about someone like Cade, who obviously like these guys can obviously pass. And I think that's the thing with Cam Thomas is it's not like he has to, turn into prime Chris Paul and get like 8 or 9 assists a game. No one's really asking that of him. But even if he could like average around like 4 or 5 assists, I just think that would make him so much more dangerous. And to Colin's point, since I would say over the last couple of years, he hasn't really had that other player that like if Cam Thomas goes out there and is like 8 for 24, he knows he has a teammate that can go 8 for 13. And I mean like Cam Johnson kind of approximates that, but that's not really who we're talking about. Like Colin said, we're talking about KD, Kyrie,
Right.
guys like that. But yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see moving forward. And like Colin said, it could just be we accept him for who he is. He's a combo guard or mostly a 2 guard who can masquerade as a point guard and see how that goes.
Before we end this Cam Thomas spiel, I want to rapid fire final thoughts on what Cam Thomas is owed and the grade that you give him. I'm giving him a B just because of the injuries. Everything else, he did exactly what I wanted to see, but the sample size is small. And I'm looking at 4 years, $85 million.
Sharif, go ahead, buddy.
I give him a B. I think I pretty much, echo what Pooch is saying. Like, I think he pretty much did what he was expected to do. And I'd argue if he played more, maybe saw more. I'll go a little spicy. I'll say 4 years, 90 million. And, still keep him in that 20 to 25 range.
I will give it 4 years, 84 million. Just a little bit more than Claxton with the inflation. Pooch, I'm the king of analogies, so I'm gonna give you one here as we grade him.
We're playing the Price is Right as it is.
So Cam Thomas is now. I've never been a teacher or a professor, so I don't know quite if this is how it works or not. But Cam Thomas is like the student. He showed up every day. He came to class. He asked great questions. He did all the things that you want to see from a student who's learning the subject. But unfortunately, he missed the midterm because he was sick. He missed the final because he was sick. So you're like, what do I give this kid? Like that was him missing like 50 games this year. So it's like, what do we do here? The faith is there from what you saw, but you didn't see a lot of it, and you didn't see the thing that you can normally put the grade on. So I'm giving him a C because it is right smack in the middle, and I feel like that student deserves to pass. I saw enough from him this year that he deserved to pass. He deserves another contract. But at the same time, no one likes a player who gets injured. It's the worst thing in sports, no matter what sport it is. But it's a damn shame that he got hurt this year. And he only played 20 games. I think he played 60 some last year. He's never made it to more than 70 in a season. I think the injury concern for him is starting to become a thing that we have to talk about. And that sucks. But next year, just as much the passing and the defense, I will be looking for him to stay healthy because that's something we got to see out of him.
Yeah, I don't want to beat this horse to death, but also it's worth noting like he is a restricted free agent, and learn from Sean Marks' first year as GM of the Nets. Like he was throwing poison pill contracts at restricted free agents Donatas Montejunis and Alan Crabb. Like he was throwing numbers at guys because just why not? I wonder if there's a team out there that's really eyeing him, and does the team maybe throw him more than what they expect the Nets would want to give him? I mean, the Nets have a lot of cap space, as Sharif mentioned, but Sean Marks did it in the past, and it kind of worked. Like I'm curious to see if that's something that does happen.
You remember when we were scared that the Pistons were going to throw a bag at Cam Johnson 2.5 years ago? Times
Yeah.
have certainly changed. It's funny to think about now.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out. We got Nostradamus in here live. And Nostradamus says, what contract extension would make you guys mad for Cam Thomas? His agent is going to want Emmanuel Quickly money. So he's asking, what if we gave Cam Thomas 5 years, $160 million? Like, and Nostradamus is saying that we're severely underestimating the situation.
I don't like the word mad. I hate being mad over a young guy getting paid, you know. But yeah, I would say that's an overpay. That's the word I'll use. That's I don't know what they're doing up in Toronto. Like, and it goes a lot deeper than what's going on with Quickly a guy that I like. But yeah, that's an overpay. I wouldn't be thrilled with that if I'm going to use some sort of terminology.
I mean, well, I agree with Kyle. I wouldn't use the word mad. I mean, whatever a guy gets paid, they're going to get paid. And, you know, all these guys deserve a contract of some degree. But if you're just basing it off of last year's free agency amongst guards, obviously Nostradamus brings up Emmanuel Quickly, who signed basically for 32.5 over 5 years. And then the next player after that was James Harden at 35. So the question you really need to ask yourself is, if you're going to give Cam Thomas $32 million a year, could he ever get close to James Harden right now? And I don't think he could. And that doesn't mean he'd be a bad player. It's just James Harden's James Harden. Could he be Emmanuel Quickly? I mean, I think they're about the same right now. And if anything, Emmanuel Quickly has his own injury issues after this season. That's part of the reason Toronto, you know, was losing a whole bunch of games in the beginning of the year. Obviously not just because of him, but so I guess if you want to use a logic that Quickly got the contract, and if Thomas is like close to him, can he get it? Sure. But, and I think Pooch mentioned it, like at some point, especially in restricted free agency, you're only really bidding against yourself if no one else can really give him the contract.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if there is some type of thing where, like Pooch said, if the Nets are, you know, half in, half out on Cam, maybe there's a way you could do a sign and trade so you don't lose him for nothing, which would be obviously better than just letting him walk. Because, I mean, I know, you know, Sean Marks wants to prioritize cap space, so you're going to have to spend some of that. And I'd rather spend it on Cam, even if it's overpaid, than like just bring in this free agent that we hope we can trade later. So that's like my thoughts on it. I wouldn't pay him $32 million a year, but it's better than losing him for nothing.
Yeah, and if you're looking at it from Cam Thomas's perspective, it's not the worst thing in the world. He's 23 years old. You sign a 3, maybe 4-year contract, and you're just entering your prime. So you have these next 3 years, 4 years to make your money and also show that you deserve that 35 mil that Sharif was mentioning, that, you know, if you're James Harden-esque, then you deserve it. So he's in a great position, and I think the Nets are in a good position for having him on their team. Looking ahead now, Nets are 23-46. With Jordy Fernandez and a lot of the guys on this team, they have pride. And I think that Sean Marks, he wanted to kind of instill some sort of culture, get that grit back, get that establish some sort of identity. Like they're not completely shameless this year. And I think we could all agree on that, right? Like they're playing hard. They're not playing to lose in their power. Like they're doing everything they can to actually win basketball games. 23-46. They're not the Washington Wizards. They're not all the way at the bottom, but you look, they have 13 games left. You know, do you guys think, especially you two, you guys are at every game, you covered this team daily. Do you think that they kind of start pulling Cam Johnson a little bit? Do they start pulling Nick Claxton? Do they pull some of these veterans out and fuck it, shamelessly tank?
So I'll say this. I think they've already started, because you've already had Nick Claxton had missed a game recently due to rest. Now, you could argue he has looked a bit worn down at times, but I don't know if it's been to the point where he needs to sit. And then the Nets announced, I think about an hour ago, Cam Johnson is not playing tomorrow against the Pacers because he's resting. So I think, and I mean, D'Angelo Russell, he's been in and out of the lineup with right ankle injury management. So, I mean, I think they're starting the process. They're not going to be the Jazz or the Thunder and just say, who's our top 8 guys? They're not touching the floor. We don't care what they got. So, I mean, you can call it ethical tanking, like Colin said. At least I'd rather see that than what the Jazz are doing or what the OKC pulled that one time. And I'm glad, on a side note, I'm glad the NBA is cracking down on it slightly.
Yeah, I did see that Cam is going to be resting tomorrow. It always is kind of funny to see on the injury report. You're used to left ankle sprain, right? Achilles tendonitis, something like that. Rest. It kind of makes you raise your eyebrow. No, but I saw the Raptors a couple nights ago. Their thing was that they were up big, and then they took out Scotty Barnes and Jakob Poeltl and those guys, and that's something that I'm going to be watching for with the Nets, because I feel like listening to Jordan, hearing him talk about how the guys that are on the floor, they're always going to play to win. So I feel like when you make a guy active, you bring him on the floor, he plays a game, it's a little bit different to say, all right, now I'm just like yanking you because we got to make sure we don't win this game, even though we're not going to say it, but that's what's going on here. That's different than just saying, all right, we're going to rest you tonight, like wink, wink, because you're really tired. I feel like those are two different games. And the first thing I mentioned, where you're taking the guy out in the fourth quarter like the Raptors did, that is more so saying, like, all right, like now I'm stopping you from being the competitive player that you are. You've already locked into the game as the competitive professional athlete that you are, and now I'm yanking you out by, your collar. Like that feels like a little bit more of a cut into the competitiveness that the Nets have seemed to have championed of late. At the same time, though, we've also heard Jordy say that he's going to prioritize younger players and younger development. So I think if you do that, you can do that, and you can say, hey, it's really important that Jalen Wilson gets these minutes to close out the year for his development. And I think even a guy like Cam Johnson, even though he can understand that there are ancillary benefits to that, such as tanking, that might be the reason that's happening. But at the same time, you can understand, dude, we're already eliminated from the playoffs whenever that day hits. It really doesn't make sense to try to win games, even to go to the playoffs, even if that was your goal. Now, all that's there is developing young talent. That's the only thing you can strive for. So I think once we reach that point, maybe we'll see a little bit more of that.
Yeah, at this rate of the game, guys, all lose. Finish the season on a 15-game losing streak for all I care. Like at this rate, just get the best possible odds to get a good draft pick. But that's just me. And Colin, Sharif, like the beginning of the season, I looked at Colin and I said, I don't believe in tanking. Like I don't want them to tank. Like it's just not in my blood as a basketball fan. But this past month or so, what are we doing here? Like now let's rev this thing up and bulldozer through the door with this tank. So I personally think that Shaw Marks and Jordy and these guys, all right, like sit out. The thing is, they're going to squeeze out a couple wins just because they're playing so hard under Jordy Fernandez.
Yeah, no, I wish somebody could go up to Jordy Fernandez and put their hand on his shoulder and say, it's okay. It's okay for you to lose a couple of these games down the stretch. You've done enough. You've done more than enough to prove that you are bringing back Brooklyn grit and that you are a good coach, and you've instilled a winning mentality in this team. You've done that. And, tanking and losing some games in the last month of the season, no one's going to come back in the summer and the offseason and say, well, the Nets had a pretty cruddy record in March and April. So Jordy Fernandez, he did not install a winning culture. No one is going to do that. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I think it's actually funny because I think I'm pretty sure Colin was at the game. We were joking about it one of the other nights. You could just see Jordy like proverbially pulling his hair out, and it's like, bro, it's okay. You've done your job. It's okay. Everybody recognizes that you can coach, and right now that's one less thing for Sean Marks and the team to worry about. You are fine. Just make it to the end, because Jordy is coaching his ass off, and I mean that's great to see, especially like. And I think I've had these conversations periodically over the season. Is that even if the Nets never, let's say, go, full Utah with the tank, they're losing games either way. I think they've only won 3 of their last like 15 games coming out of the All-Star break. And, like winnable games against the Bulls, the Celtics twice. This time the Celtics without Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. I mean, like, this team is going to struggle even against some of the mediocre teams. I know they just beat Atlanta, but I think they'll probably finish the season about where they're at now. It sucks because you want to get the best chance possible to get Cooper Flag, but I think whether or not they try to, they're going to be taken either way.
Yeah. And look, they built that respectability back. Nobody around the league is taking the Nets easy. Despite whoever's playing, whatever it is, they did exactly like Jordy has done exactly what he needed to do. And it's a kudos to Sean Marks and this organization for, again, I don't know if it's like shameless, if it's ethical, if you want to call it ethical tanking, or just like a very competent head coach that you hired. That's the biggest thing that comes from this year. But Jordy is in, I think, a win-win situation because they're going to probably get a top 5 pick. And you've shown that you have a good coach and that's building an identity that has respect with these players. Kenny Atkinson, when they play the Cavs, had said that, when I look at Jordy's teams, I feel like I'm in FIBA. Like I'm playing these guys that are really playing hard, right? Like, and who would know better than Kenny Atkinson himself? So Jordy has done a fantastic job. Jordy, at the same time, if you're listening to this by any chance, just take it easy. We salute you. We love you. We care about you. We got your back, but take it easy with the wins. on a bright note, guys, as beat writers, we talked about at the beginning of the show just what can be salvaged. We all kind of touched on the point of like who could kind of stand out, maybe whether it be for next year, for the future, whatever it might be. And a name that's come up in the past week is Maxwell Lewis. He debuted with the Nets and he got hurt, was out for a couple of months, and now he's been a bright spot. Can you guys just shed some light on that?
Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, no, he's been hooping lately. I was sick this weekend, so I missed the weekend games, but I was watching, and I was watching last night too. And he only had 1 bucket last night, but it was one where he kind of did like a jab step forward, and he self-created. And he's a very dynamic, like athletic guy, still very raw, but he can kind of create his own shot. And one thing I noticed was that he jumped Jalen Wilson in the rotation last night. And Jordi Fernandez, from his first press conference as Nets head coach, said that nothing is guaranteed. No lineups are guaranteed. No rotation spots, no minute spots are guaranteed. So this is a guy that has openly said, like, yeah, we're going to have a fluid rotation. So it might be nothing, but, it also might be something because Jalen Wilson, one of his big setbacks is that he really can't create for himself. And, he's 2 years older than Maxwell Lewis and younger, check. That's a big thing for the Nets right now. Seems to have a deeper bag. That's just a check in terms of basketball-wise. You have a higher ceiling if you can create your own shot and defend and shoot the 3 like Jalen Wilson does. So not to make this a Jalen Wilson negative segment here, but I think the thing to watch with Maxwell Lewis now is to see, does he continue to overtake Jalen Wilson in the rotation? Because that's what stood out to me last night. Not just that his game, but the way Jordy used him.
Yeah, I think actually Colin hits it pretty much on the head. I think the interesting thing with Max is that I think where Max showed his value in the lineup was just Max just has more athletic pop, and that helps in transition. And I know the Nets are, they've been one of the lower paced teams in the league throughout the season, but when they can get out and run, who do you see? You usually see, like Zaire, Keon, and now you see Max. And that just putting that kind of pressure on defenses, just from an athletic standpoint, just makes offense so much easier to come by. And, Jalen, I think Jalen has been, this will probably be controversial, I think Jalen's been a hit for a late second round pick because he's actually been, I would say, a solid contributor to this team the past couple of years. But just like Colin said, I mean, it's been the thing since he came out of college, just not really able to create anything for himself. He doesn't really have that type of, quick twitch to get to the basket. He's just pretty much getting by on like effort and fundamentals, and all that's fine. It's just when someone like Max Lewis comes in, it's like Yeah, that's what we're going to put in the game.
Well, he has a team option for next year. I wasn't able to catch these past couple games. I was on vacation, so I'm sorry to Maxwell Lewis and Nets Nation that's listening to this, but he has a team option next year, and I feel it's relevant to the question that we asked earlier in the show: is who can stand out in these last 13 games? And this is somebody that has clearly grabbed the attention of the coaching staff. So we'll see what he's got the rest of the way. Anyone else got anything else they want to say about Maxwell Lewis?
The defense and the ball pressure's been there too. That's been Jordy's MO, another thing of his from the day he started. Brooklyn's defense in the first half last night against Boston was fantastic. It's a lot easier when Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum aren't there, but still, it was nobody could get an inch anywhere. It was awesome to watch, and he was a big part of that.
Big theme since coming out of the All-Star break, no? Has been their defense.
Yeah. I could talk a year off about their defense. The I'm sure Sharif sees it too, but I'm so impressed by the hedging on the doubles that the bigs are doing, and even the wings where it's a high screen and they're guarding both the roll man and the ball handler at the same time and flexing in and out depending on where the ball is, and it's all like a judgment thing. It's really been next level. Day'Ron Sharp had a stellar game doing it last night.
It's funny because since the All-Star break, that's actually been one of the things I've been disappointed about was the consistent defense. So I have two theories on this, and I'm not going to, take too long on this. Obviously, heading into the All-Star break, the big thing was like in February, they were like leading the league in terms of points given up to opponents per game. But when you kind of looked at their schedule, they played a lot of teams that struggled on the offensive end or like ran into teams that had key injuries. Not that means you still, you don't get credit for playing defense, but coming out of an All-Star break, I mean, they held the Cavs, I think it was like 105 points or something, which is actually really good. But then they lost to the Wizards and they pretty much gave them like 120 points. Even the game in Atlanta, they won that because they were actually shooting the ball well, not really because they were defending. So I think with this team, it's tough because Pooch, you mentioned it, I think in the last episode, I would like to see Nick get back to like, even if it means he's going to give up some layups under the basket, that's supposed to be your teammate that's got to help you on that. Nick has to get back to like defending the rim, avoid goaltends, but even just like deter. You ain't got to block the shot. It just feels like his effort in that particular aspect wanes and flows. But yeah, I would like to see them play better defense, at least against the teams they should be able to defend, even with like this version of the roster.
We got some questions from some Nets fans. We'll address these quick. We've got Biff Johnson on X. Besides the top four, who he says is Ace Bailey, Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, VJ, who would you like to see the Nets draft outside of the top four guys?
How about the St. John's starting five, Pooch?
Oh, my God. Nah. I love him, but no.
No, I mean...
Not after the year that we endured. No, with all due respect to RJ and all those guys.
Just a joke.
Zuby.
No, I don't know if he's the right fit because Nick Claxton there and Day'Ron Sharp is there, but Kaman Maluach, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, is just, all right, take your guy.
Yeah, you did. Go ahead.
Not the first time this has happened, but no. What did I just talk about? Defense and hedging on screens. Am I covering the roll man? Am I covering the ball handler? Am I able to do it both at the same time? The Nets have been making that a big part of their defense and how they're able to run around the floor and able to apply pressure and still recover. This dude, he's gigantic. He's got a huge frame. He's only 18 years old, by the way, so there is so much upside to go with that. He can cover the northwest corner of the floor to the southeast corner of the floor, just like that. I just think the athleticism, the footwork is there, and he can kind of stretch the floor. He's not a aggressive shooter, but he's a willing shooter. And at 18, and he can do all those other things at the defensive end. That's all the makings of a superstar big in this league. So I don't know how he fits with the Nets, but if the Nets drafted him, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah, I think that's actually interesting because I'm trying not to think of this draft in terms of fit because I know the Nets are at a point right now you're just accumulating talent. You can't be too concerned with how they fit. However, I think one guy would be interesting to see in this rebuild would be Jeremiah Fears. point guard out of Oklahoma. I know like he has some rawness to his game, but he's still, he was one of the youngest players in college basketball this year. So I just see a guy that, while he's not like Dylan Harper, for example, who just looks like he belongs in the NBA. Jeremiah Fears, obviously, he's a slighter frame, which is how I mean it, not like he can't play. But it would just be nice to see the Nets finally take a point guard or have a point guard where you could be like, okay, he's gonna be on this team 3 years from now because that's a guy we're singling out, we're gonna develop. That would probably be someone I would watch out for. I don't know if the Nets would take him because I think he's sliding down some draft boards. But that would be someone I would like to see them take and take a chance on.
Colin stole my answer. Come on, Maluach.
Derek Queen is another big who's very versatile.
Yeah. I like Maluach though, man. I think Cooper Flagg is getting all the hype at Duke, and rightfully so. I mean, don't get it mistaken. I want Cooper Flagg. I want one of these top 4 guys. But if I had to say, I'm right with you. And I think any longtime Nets fan will tell you, like back to the Jersey days when Jay Kidd was there, like Nets fans have wanted like a dominant big man that could really actually control the paint. Now, Jared Allen, love him, but he wasn't a bully ball big. Like same with Nick Claxton. Like you love him for lobs and blocks, but still not a bully ball big. Like this kid out of Duke, Maluach, 7'2", he has a skill set and the frame that of somebody that he kind of has the frame of like a Bam Adebayo, and Nets fans will attest to this. Like there has not been a Nets center maybe since like Jason Williams in the like late 90s that has really been that presence. But I will say, guys, like to this point, to counter my own point in Collins, like also don't love drafting a big so early. Like maybe that's just me. Like the game has changed so much where wings win in this league, and they're so interchangeable in every lineup that if you can find someone to plug in, granted they have 4 first-round picks this year, but if they could find the right wing or a point guard, to Sharif's point, I'd be thrilled. But I want Cooper Flagg, I want Ace Bailey, I want one of these big names, VJ Edgecombe. Like I don't know. But outside of those 4 to answer Biff's question, Maluach.
Yeah.
Moving on. Trey Man, 1, 2, 3. Thanks for the question, Trey Man. We got how many players on the current Nets team will be on the next great Nets team? And he's talking Sharif and Colin. He's talking about a 50-win Nets team that at least makes it to the second round. Who's gonna be here on this current team?
Sharif, you can go first. My answer might not be nice.
The only answer I could come to, only person I could really think of that I would guess would have a really reasonable chance of being here is Noah Clowney. That's about it. Because like Cam Johnson, they're probably going to look to trade in the offseason if they can. Cam Thomas maybe would have the next best odds, but there is, and I think Pooch, you touched on it in the previous segment, there's probably about as good a chance that he could also just be poached by another team if they offer him enough money that the Nets don't want to match. But Noah seems to be, of the younger players on this team, the one guy that's going to stick around. And at this rate, the Nets might be in this place for the next few years before they're actually ready to win games. So yeah, I'd pick Noah Clowney.
Yeah, we had a similar question to this earlier, and I said Noah Clowney as well. One, just because of how young he is, and his game translates to the modern game with how he can defend multiple positions, and he's a tall guy. He can cover so much ground on the court, but he can also shoot the three. So he really checks all those boxes. But when I read this question and I see 50 wins and I see second round of the playoffs, my guess would be 0, to just be blunt. If I'm going to pick someone, it's going to be Clowney. But think about when the Nets first started their actual rebuild. Sean Kilpatrick and like Shane Larkin and like Chris McCullough, like those guys when the Nets were starting to rebuild, we probably all sat around and watched them have their good moments on the court, and we're like, this guy could be a building block. Could he be a building block? But it takes a lot to get to a 50-win team that's going into the second round. My guess is that for as good as some of these young guys can play, odds are too much time is going to pass, and it's just not going to be enough. It's hard to stay in this league. It's hard to stay in this league and on the same team. So I think the odds are against the Nets. We got to remind ourselves we're at the very beginning of this rebuild. Everyone wants to get to the 50-plus win teams and the teams that are going for a title, but there's a lot that needs to happen before that. And unfortunately, a lot of that stuff is players coming in and out the door. So I'm going to pick a guy, Clowney, but if I'm betting that it's 0.
Yeah, I guess the last one was the last rebuild. Joe Harris and Spencer Dinwiddie made it out of that one.
Yeah.
J.A. made it, but then he was traded. Karis LeVert made it, but they were traded right away in that first season. Joe Harris and even Spence were really the two that made it out. But I'm with you,
They
Colin.
got those guys in like 2018-19. They started that rebuild in like 17. You know what I mean?
Joe Harris was 2016,
He was?
2017.
Okay.
He was Kenny's first year. That was a team with Anthony Bennett and Justin Hamilton, and like he was really the one. He was the one guy. But you're absolutely right though. It's really like you think about a 50-win season. That only happened twice during the Big Three era. It's not something like you can't just throw 50 wins out there like it's nothing in year one of the rebuild. I love your guys' answer about Noah Clowney, and I don't need to echo any points that you guys made, but I love the Noah Clowney answer. But I'm going to be basic and say Cam Thomas. I mean, you're looking at somebody who's going to get an extension right now. We think that will probably be around 3-4 years. So, I guess the question would be, one, is Cam Thomas getting a 4-year deal? And two, do the Nets win 50 games in the next 4 years? And I do think they will. I think it'll take 2 more years to maybe get somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody else.
Maybe still a little bit wishful thinking, but
it certainly is. It certainly is.
Okay,
but
it's okay to be wishful. We haven't been able to be wishful about it very well.
The biggest wish are those ping pong balls, but
exactly, yeah.
But I think the timing of Cam's restricted free agency could potentially line up with maybe the back end of that contract correlating with like win now mode and having a star to add. I don't think that Josiah and Sean Marks are going to want this to go past 2026. That free agent class that summer is going to be excellent, and they're going to have the money. They got New York City. You advertise Cam. He's on a 3 or 4 year deal. Hypothetically speaking, maybe he is here as a number 2 or number 3 scorer on this team.
Not to go completely off script, you just brought up like a burning question now that I have for both of you. So based on the whole timeline thing, like let's say it might take like 4 years for this team to be like a 50-win team. Do you think that timeline gets accelerated? And Pooch, I'll start with you. Do you think it gets accelerated? Let's say they're able to get Cooper Flagg in this draft. Is the timeline still 4 years, or do you think it'd be a lot quicker?
No, I think it's quicker. I think you make sure that you don't rush Flagg's development in year one. You still have your own draft pick in 2026. This upcoming free agent class isn't very, very good. Now we keep hearing flexibility, which is the best thing you could have as a team. Cap space, a desirable market, draft picks out the wazoo. But there's no reason for them to go spend all this money in 2025 when you have 4 first-round picks. So if you get a Coop, I think at that point you're really prioritizing his development in year one, getting his feet wet in the league. But then you look at that 2026 free agent class, and it's good. And the Nets are going to have the money to do it and still have draft picks. So I really, really don't think that this is going to be a 5-year rebuild. And part of that is from murmurs that I've heard, and part of that is also just like the timeline. Like Joe Tsai doesn't want to wait 5 years to watch this team be good again. Like he he needs to get people in into the stadium. And those rumors about Giannis, and I'm not going to go to Jimmy Butler, but Giannis, and the fact that we're looking at De'Aaron Fox, they're all legit. And what does that tell you? Like if the right guy comes along, on top of potentially having a top 3 pick, I don't think you're really waiting too long. Like, you have Cam Thomas as it is, you have Claxton, you have Cam Johnson, assuming he doesn't get traded. You add Coop to that lineup, and another star or two in a year after this next season. I think that you're looking at the 2026, 2027 season, and you're saying, let's go now. Like, Jordy's proven himself. You're giving Cooper Flag or this top pick a year under their belt. These other guys are now considered veterans. Let's go win 50 games. Let's go win the East.
Yeah, I think it's all going to come down to, what guy they land. Like, is it Cooper Flag, or is it someone who's a little bit more developmental like Ace Bailey is? So I think there is a world where if they do get a guy and he's great his rookie year, they want to pick up the San Antonio Spurs blueprints where, they still are kind of rebuilding, but like they made some win now moves. They went out and they got Chris Paul. And I think like Ramona Shelburne had an article, or someone at ESPN did, where they were like, they want to win now with Wemby. Like they're not letting it be some, all right, we're going to build him up. Like they recognize how great he is and how they have a chance to win with him and compete with him already. I think the Nets, you can hear it in the way they speak about things and how they've moved and how they haven't traded Cam Johnson and things like that, and have maintained this cap flexibility. Like they very easily could have taken on some cruddy contracts to get more picks to make it even longer, but maybe even like better rebuild, but they haven't. They've made moves to preserve cap space, which tells you that they are serious about keeping that avenue open. So it's easy to say they don't want to be like the Hornets because no one wants to be like the Hornets, but I do think they're very fearful of making it one of these things where it's, oh, we're in year 5 of our 2-year rebuild. No one wants that, but I think they especially don't want that, being in New York, and they want to fill those seats.
Those ping pong balls
with Nets fans, might I add, not Warriors and Celtics fans.
Those ping pong balls, Sharif, on May 12th, and you guys know this, I'm not saying anything we don't, but those ping pong balls are really going to determine the next couple of years because, as you alluded, if they get a top pick, then I think it's like, let's rock out, let's do this thing. Where Sean Marks did make that trade with Houston, not only for the 2025 pick, but also that 2026 pick. So I kind of see that 2026 pick as like an insurance to this year. Like if they're not able to get the guy that they had their eyes on, or they're not able to get a top 3, top 5 pick, they still can tank in 2026 and get a top pick and run it back. But I think it's very much dependent on where those balls land on May 12th. What do you think, Sharif?
I pretty much agree with the both of you. I found it interesting when we started talking about like who will be here the next time the Nets are ready to win. And I know, windows for that kind of rebuild depend on who you get. Like even when you look at the Pistons, for example, their rebuild went on for a while until they got Cade, and Cade was good enough where now they're like actually a playoff contender. But then you can look at like the Wizards, who are still looking for that guy. And it's been 3 years since they traded Bradley Beal? 4 years? And I mean, they were kind of rebuilding.
This is their second year. They kind of got screwed last year because it was not a hot draft. But
right. So it's interesting because if the timeline is shorter, then I do think like Cam Thomas would be around. And like, let's say they're able to get Cooper this year, I could see even Cam Johnson still being around, unless you're able to like use his contract to get like a better number 2 to Cooper, or maybe like a better player. But obviously, like, if the timeline is longer, it's probably like Noah Clowney, just because if it's like a 5-year rebuild or like close to that, I think, like you said, Poos, it just wouldn't line up with anyone that's on the team right now, except for like the younger players.
Right. All good points. I mean, we have a question from the great Lucas Kaplan, which is kind of coinciding with this question. It's a little bit watered down. But he's asking us what fringe NBA player that's getting significant minutes on the Nets this year can make a good career out of themselves or out of this. I'm saying Zaire Williams, and I'm just going to keep it as simple as that. What about you guys?
You can go first, Sharif.
Okay, fringe NBA player that's getting minutes right now. That's actually an interesting question because
Yeah,
I guess that would kind of get you to like I think probably like Max Lewis. Because I don't
really?
know if like Zaire is I don't know if he's a because when I think of fringe NBA player, I think like some guy who might not be on our roster next year if they were a free agent. And if I think Pooch brought up that Max has a team option. But I think like if he can finish his season out strong, I think Max is one of the I'll say fringe NBA players that if he finishes this year strong, could make a nice career for himself moving forward, whether that's with the Nets or not.
Yeah. No, I mean my guy through a lot of this just because of his game style has been Tyrese Martin. Like there's a lot of things in the NBA that guys have their specialty but his is shooting the 3-pointer. And that is a skill that is never been more valued than it is in the league right now. He's done some little things like he's shown that he can you probably don't want him to be your point guard one, but he can handle the rock in the backcourt if someone blitzes your point guard and you got to dump it off to someone. Like he's serviceable in that. He has a really nice feel when I watch him play, just from like an eye test perspective with how he's coming around screens and how he can sense his space. And he's shooting 39% from three since February on 5 point something like attempts per game. That's really not half bad. You can make a career for yourself as a sharpshooter, and I think he's got a chance to do that. And maybe doing even a little bit more if he can refine some of those other tools that he's flashed. So, but I also very much agree with what Pooch said on Zaire. We've talked about Zaire a lot on this show, and I think he'll be back next year because of his two-way play, and
Yeah.
I think he really deserves it, and it's a good story baked into this not so fun season.
He's been one of those unsung heroes in a tanking year that kind of gets lost amidst Ben Simmons and Cam Thomas, and then the emergence of Cam Johnson, the stellar job of Jordy Fernandez. But then there are those like underdog stories that the redemption stories, I guess you could say, and Zaire has been right up there. But I am curious, just to end this note, like, do we consider Trenton Watford a fringe NBA player?
I think so. I mean, you
'Cause
consider this past offseason, I think it was about a month or so. He was like testing free agency and came back to the Nets I believe on his qualifying offer, which I think to me says like he didn't have much of a market. Obviously, he was good for the Nets, but I think the one thing you see with Trenton is he has a very specific play style he doesn't fit in every rotation, basically. So I consider him a fringe NBA player, even though I do think he's talented. I just think with the way he plays, like he needs the ball in his hands, but he's also not. I wouldn't consider him a primary creator. So then you're kind of in that bucket of, is he going to be like a point forward, or is he going to be like, kind of what Jordy has been doing with him this season? Is he going to be the backup point guard and we just, take his rebounding? But yeah, I would say Trenton's a fringe NBA player.
I'm throwing his name into the hat. I'm a big Watford fan. I'm disappointed. That's another disappointment for me, like along the lines of Cam Thomas, that we just didn't get enough of a sample size to see what he could do consistently. Again, in and out, and that's also hamstring related. So it's just I want to see what he could do under Jordy's system, healthy and consistent. So moving on, we got a game brought to you by our Jeopardy host, Colin Helwig.
That's a new intro. Sorry, no, I wasn't ready for that. I was trying to think of something snappy to say back, but no, I got nothing. But
all these analogies and the kid that missed the midterm. I figure you got something up your sleeve there. A
Actually,
young Alex Trebek.
Alex Trebek.
Is
I don't know. He's I'm trying to think like who I can't say. I know Aaron Rodgers did Jeopardy for a while, but I don't
Oh,
want to say I'm
no.
Rodgers style now. That dude's
Bob
PR is
Barker?
way down. Bob Barker did he did Jeopardy?
No. Price is right. Price is right.
Right. Got you. Nah, one of those guys. No, but
Little Steve Harvey Family Feud action.
I can settle for Steve Harvey. He's got some charisma. No, but so as all three of us very much know, there's not a whole lot going on with the Nets right now. But one thing you can always talk about with an NBA team is their uniforms. Who doesn't love talking jerseys? So I thought to kind of wrap up, something fun we could do is if we snake draft Brooklyn Nets jerseys. We're gonna do 4 rounds. So I don't know if you guys have anything prepared, but we can count the jersey era too. I know I said Brooklyn, but we'll count franchise and whole. And Sharif, you're the guest here, so I'm going to give you the first overall pick. What do you got for us?
First overall pick. Interesting. I had some time to think about this, and I don't know if it was particularly popular. But there's the Nets' city jerseys that they wore. 2020 and 2021. I think that's when they were first. I don't know if it's like the Basquiat colorway or whatever, or like the colorful.
Yeah, the black ones. The year they lost to Milwaukee in 7.
Yeah, with the colorways on the side of the jersey. I thought those were pretty fire. So I think that would be like my pick.
As the man is wearing a Basquiat shirt himself.
Yeah, I'm a fan. What can I say?
First overall pick is the black Basquiat.
Yep.
Colin, you got the number 2 pick.
I'll keep it in the Brooklyn era, and I'll keep it in the Brooklyn podcast color scheme. I like the first Biggie. I believe it was their alternate. I don't know if it was City Edition or alternate, what they call it back then, but with the Biggie Coogee on the side in 2019, the year they went to the playoffs for the first time in a very long time with D'Lo, the year that everyone romanticizes about the most. Rightfully so. That sounded a little condescending. Rightfully so.
Those are some of the best jerseys in NBA history, in my opinion.
They're fucking hot.
Like there's nothing that beats that. And like you said, it's another logo. So obviously we like that, Colin.
Very much so.
All right, so you guys are kind of handing me a layup here. The Nets have had a lot of, you got to give them credit. They haven't won a lot in their history, but they have some great jerseys. They've had some really, really nice jerseys over the years. I'm going to Dr. J, ABA, white, New York Nets, when they played on Long Island with the stars on the side. The white, red, and blue colorway.
All right, so you got it wraps back around. We're doing a snake, so you got the next one.
Shoot. I'm going to probably go with the jerseys they brought back during the Big 3 era, those blue tie-dye.
No,
that in the 90s, everyone was like, these are hideous. These are the worst jerseys. They like discontinued them after, I think, 1 season. But it was the Derek Coleman and Kenny Anderson days. So I'm going retro. My first pick is the Dr. J White Stars. My second pick is the blue tie-dye.
That's a very good 1-2 punch. The last year that they were in New Jersey, because I can still see D-Will wearing it. I don't know if it was an alternate or not, because I think they still had the grays, and maybe the grays were their alternate, but just the ones, red jerseys, Nets in big colors, soak up the entire front half of the jersey. I love that shade of red. That it's like a simple design, but it's one of my favorites, so I'll take that one.
Okay, not bad. I guess with the 6th overall pick, it's gonna be a kind of corny, but I want to pay homage. The Nets jerseys with the Bill Russell patch, just because it's the Bill Russell patch. So,
I like that.
Which color, Sharif?
You know what? Probably the white jerseys. Even though I know like it's different with, I know the home jersey used to be white, but now it can be like switched around. But I'd say the white jersey. I think that looks the cleanest with the patch on. So I guess it's me with the 7th overall pick. You know what? I'm like thinking about it too, and it's just because it's from a different era that we just don't have anymore. They're Christmas jerseys in 2013. You know, the shirt jerseys, or I don't know what people were calling them. Just because I missed that era when we had shirt jerseys, it reminded me of when we go play pickup and stuff. So yeah, I take the Christmas jersey with the sleeves on, or I guess that's really what it's called, the sleeve jersey.
Sharif, was that the one with the it was the ball with the B in it?
Yes, the ball was gray
nice.
with the big B on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I wish we could get NBA Christmas jerseys again. I mean, why the hell not? You love selling merch. It's the NBA's favorite thing to do. Should bring that back. I know Pooch feels strongly about that. No, I'm gonna flip on Sharif's idea though, and I'm gonna do the white Basquiat. I thought KD picked those out personally, and the NBA also does that. If you notice, they flip a lot of their city jerseys the year after, the year before. They did it with the Biggie ones I mentioned earlier, but those were clean. I feel like they have a little bit of a tarnished relationship because they were there for, like, we got to see KD and Kyrie play in them, and it was sick. And then all of a sudden we're watching Mikal Bridges playing them, and it's like, all right, this is just a downgrade. So they're a little bit stained, but the design is hot, so I'm going to rock with it.
Cool. All right, so this isn't my pick, but I wish the Nets wore the Joey Badass Mitchell and Ness Nets jerseys. Do you guys remember that or no?
Describe them.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Just type in Joey Badass Nets jersey. They are so like.
Oh, those
man,
are
if
hot.
they wore those, oof, I wish they wore those.
Yeah,
wish they wore those.
Oh, those are clean.
Yeah, I was when they released that, I was like, please, like that would be awesome if they wore those. But even another one, I'm not gonna pick it. But they had like a Brooklyn Dodgers theme. I just wish they were sleeveless. That would have been cool. But my pick is going to be, because it's one of my favorite jerseys of all time. I don't know if it's nostalgia. I don't know what it is, but those silver gray jerseys from the New Jersey era as well. I could just picture Kenyon Martin, Jason Kidd, all those guys running down with their high black socks. Keith Van Horn, who is respectfully right behind me, like that team, when they wore those jerseys, it was like something special was in the air at the Meadowlands that night. So I'm picking the gray throwback New Jersey Nets.
It's a good pick. All right, so this is the last swing back.
All right, I'm going to throw another curveball at you guys. They wore in 2016, 2017, they wore a remix jersey that said Nets on the front. It was black and white. It was a black and white version of the Dr. J jersey that I was bringing up. Do you remember that? It was like a charcoal and then white on the side.
Was this the BKLYN?
No.
Those are the state.
It's a very hard team's jerseys to describe because so many of them are just black and white.
I'm gonna
we'll find it though when we make the clip.
They were like a mock of the of those Dr. J jerseys, but they were adjusted to the Brooklyn colors. Those were fire.
Yeah. No,
those are pretty cool.
Yeah,
I think that was the Jeremy Lin year.
I would just say they definitely kind of like snuck in because the Nets weren't too hot that year. That was right around the beginning of the rebuild, or just kind of like post Joe Johnson years or whatever. But yeah, no, that's a good pick. If I'm gonna close out, I like that you brought up the Jackie Robinson Brooklyn Dodgers jerseys. I stand by that. Like, I think their heart was in the right place when they tried to do something like that. It's really the only other like Brooklyn team in like sports lore. I think they should find a way to try to pay homage to that in the future again.
Yeah,
but can't pick it because I just too much gray, not enough blue. The sleeves, they didn't do a good job with it. But it was a good try. Their heart was in the right place. To close out, I'm gonna do. They didn't wear these often, but they wore it the 2021-2020 year, and it was all black, and it was like a herringbone design, and it was like a circle on the chest with their numbers, as in like the train sticker or whatever. I thought those were clean, and that with the black shorts. Every time I watch the Nets playing them, I just looked to me like there were like 5 Batmans out on the floor because they were just expecting black show, and I was like, hell yeah, we're Batman. I rocked with those heavy. It was the year they lost to the Bucks in the second round. They didn't wear that. They won for like 6 or 7 games in the second half of the season.
They called them like the earned edition. They had like an earned
they've
edition.
come up with a different adjective for the jerseys every other year.
Yeah. I'm glad that somebody picked the regular jersey, the Brooklyn Nets jerseys. That Sharif did that because their black and white jerseys are fire. I love I think simplicity is better sometimes. Sharif, what do you got? Last overall pick.
There's a couple of sleepers still out there. There's 2022. They wore those blue and navy ones. It was Harden's last year here.
I guess as I'm looking over, I guess they really didn't wear they only wore one version of like Bed-Stuy jerseys. So I thought those are pretty cool. And maybe just because it's like one of a kind of thing, I find it a little
we talked about it, but I don't think anyone picked them. Yeah, so you can take the Bed-Stuy.
Okay, yeah. I just need some extra time on the clock.
Is that it? Is that us?
That's it.
Alrighty. I think we did a good job, all things considered. If you guys are listening, if you guys are watching this round, let us know who you guys think won the jersey draft. Last thing for us to close out here, though, I thought I'd give Pooch just an impossible question to answer. We're coming up on March Madness. He's a St. John's guy. Rick Pitino's stock has never been higher. Tibbs is still there. We talk about Droid all the time. Even if you want to talk WNBA, Sandy just won a championship. If you can, for me, power rank New York City basketball coaches right now. Be as biased as you would like. That is
well. So here's my thing, right? I like Tom Thibodeau, and that's not my number one pick, but I do want to touch on him because he's going to be last, I think, in all of ours right now. But maybe I'm wrong. The Knicks had the personnel, like he built that culture with that bully ball team that was defensive oriented, and like the Julius Randles on that team, and even like DiVincenzo, and like just everything that they had built was perfect for Tom Thibodeau, and they ruined it. And Karl Anthony Towns, I think highly of, but he isn't a Tibbs guy, and you know what happens when you start trying to make superstars fit into a culture that has already been established. So I'm seeing a lot of Knicks fans fighting on Twitter, like Tibbs needs to go and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, you kind of shot yourself in the foot because you had something really good going. And again, I love Cat, but not at the expense of decimating your team, your identity, your culture, everything. And now suddenly the coach is the scapegoat for you fixing your you trying to fix your personnel problems. I thought OG was great there. I thought McHale was a good fit. But I thought Cat, getting rid of Randall and DiVincenzo to fit Cat in there, just completely threw off their identity. And now Thibodeau is like trying to mix and match and play a different, like it's just not working for him right now. So I don't want to throw him under the bus because I don't think the Knicks, one, they're not bad, and two, like I don't think he should be the scapegoat. But if you're asking me who the best coach is right now, look, Jordi Fernandez, I love him to death and what he's done this year. But it's 1 year. They're still a 23-win basketball team. You love what he's done in the first year as a Nets head coach and exactly in the direction that they're trying to go. He's doing everything in his power. Like he gets an A+ for this year. He is a player's coach. He is somebody that wants to work hard, wants to reestablish that identity, is proud to be in Brooklyn. He's everything that you want. But what Rick Pitino has done, not only for St. John's, but for New York City basketball as a whole. Like, this team hasn't done any of this in the last 40 years. That being said, also, there's a counter to that. NIL has changed everything. And St. John's just so happens to have a billionaire alumni that is willing to spend the money on NIL and get these players. Kadari from Seton Hall, like, I don't want to minimize what Rick Pitino has done. It's just that the landscape of college has changed so much that you could really thank the donors first and foremost for Pitino's emergence and St. John's emergence. With that being said, though, all that matters is wins. We'll see how he does in the March Madness tournament. But I think the fact that he is winning games, putting St. John's back on the map, got them back to the tournament, got them a Big East championship. I mean, this is a team that hasn't done this. They haven't won a Big East championship since 2000. They haven't won 30 games in a single season since 1985. This is the godfather of college hoops, baby. Let's go St. John's. Rick Pitino, number 1. Jordy Fernandez, number 2. Tom Thibodeau, 2B.
I was waiting for you to start cooking. That's what we needed.
Oh, yeah. Get me fired up. It's the godfather, man. When I saw him in that white tuxedo, I was like, let's fucking go. Like, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. I went to St. John's when Chris Mullin there, and I love Chris Mullin as a person, as a basketball player, not as a basketball coach. Rick Pitino has brought respect back to New York City hoops in the college realm at the very least, and people are hyped to get back to MSG. Gotta love it.
Yeah, I think I'm right in the same position with you. I think Tibbs is a great basketball mind and a great motivator and builder of culture. But I think he needs to take the step that Brad Stevens did, where he kind of maybe he goes back into the front office, because for the life of me, I cannot support a guy who just plays his guys, his best players, deep into games. I don't forgive him for Derrick Rose. When I was in 6th grade, I needed that team to beat the Sixers in the first round because I'm a Pennsylvania kid, and Derrick Rose got hurt, and they did not. So I do not forgive him for that. Still, these are all great coaches, but I think I have the exact same order as you. Pitino very much like Jordy's hot right now because he's like the new kid on the block, but he doesn't really have like the history. Tibbs is not a bad coach, but his stock isn't as high right now, but he's got this history of being a good coach. Pitino right now is hot, and he's got a history of being a good coach. He really does it all. So he's the man, and you guys deserve to be enjoying this run you guys are on.
They also they're not a good shooting team. Like, to his credit, like he squeezes everything out of his guys and turns them into like defensive monsters. You know, like that full court like when it's time to turn the game around, like Pitino, like it's like the snap of a finger, like full court press, and the game changes. And that's damn good coaching. That's preparation. That's coaching. I know I said NIL and all that stuff, but this is somebody that's just been there and done that. And when you watch those games and you watch this team, you know, like, man, that guy, like you know, it's the aura about him too, like that white tuxedo walking around MSG, baby. Like, no, you just know though, like this guy, he's done it. It doesn't matter. You put him on any college basketball team, and they're gonna get better.
Yeah, I think pretty much at this point in time, it'd be Rick Pitino, Tom Thibodeau, Jordy Fernandez, and obviously this is in terms of just what they're doing right now. Like, you know, Pooch, you did enough of explaining for all three of us with the way you got hot towards the end. But yes, yeah, what he's doing for St. John's right now is just like, I mean, even when you watch the games from, like, I haven't been to a St. John's game, but it looks like from the view of the camera, MSG is jumping in a way. I don't even know if they're jumping like that for next games. That's probably hyperbole.
Careful. We're gonna come after you now.
Twitter is on.
That's okay. They can at me. It's okay. But you know, so what Rick Pitino is doing right now is just incredible for that program, especially like Pooch laid out, doing stuff they haven't done in 2 or 3 decades. I also think Tibbs is just getting a lot of flack for probably having the best team that's in that next tier in the East. Like, no one's catching Cleveland, and Boston is getting the benefit of the doubt of being the reigning champs. The Knicks are probably like the 3rd best team in the East, and it's like, oh, it's all downhill. It's like, it's weird to see it because it's like, I get it. The Knicks, when they got Cat, they were expected to be a contender. It's funny because I still think they are. They're just not on the level of Boston and Cleveland, and that's okay. Tibbs wants to play guys 15 minutes a game, even though there's only 48 minutes to be played. But, you know, that's his style. We knew it. He knows how to coach ball. And Jordy has, we talked about it earlier, Jordy's done everything that's been asked of him. We just need him to, you know, take it easy on the sidelines, make it till next year. And then I know when we get a good team in front of him, when we have these power rankings again, he'll be at the top.
I got one more analogy.
Oh boy.
I'm going to take us into the Disney Pixar universe.
Oh Lord.
All right. Cars 1. You got the three racers. You got Doc Hudson. He is just the man. He's still killing it. He's in the top 3, but he's been there. He's been a champ for years. That is Rick Pitino. Chick Hicks, another great racer. Questionable methods, but he's a great racer. Not as old as the king, but he's been around for a while, and he gets results. Questionable methods, but he gets results. That's Tom Thibodeau. Lightning McQueen, the new kid on the scene, the rookie, the first rookie to ever almost win a Piston Cup. Maybe Jordy hasn't been as prestigious as that, but he is the new kid on the block where everything he's doing, everyone is like, whoa, he's raising eyebrows. He's turning heads. We don't know what his career will look like yet, but we know that he is off to a great start. That's it.
Great job. You know, I now you're making me want to watch Cars, but if there's a car that runs out, if there's a car that runs out of gas, then that's Thibodeau.
Yeah.
But you know, Tibbs, it seems like he has a history of, like you said, building that culture, and then after like year 3 or year 4, I don't know if he loses the locker room, but it's like, all right, like we're burnt out, like, you know, like we like, and it kind of is it's overplayed. And I think for Knicks fans right now, and I'll end it at this for myself, but to Sharif's point, like if there's a year to do it, it's now. The East like is so bad. Besides the Celtics and Cavs, which is so top heavy, and 2 teams that I believe if you have the right team, you could beat them. They're not unstoppable. Like we're not looking at, you know, the Warriors of their golden era and, you know, all that, like the Heatles or anything like that. Like these are beatable teams. The East is such a drop off, and Sharif kind of said it. Like you have that 1, 2, and then that drop off to the Knicks, where, you know, you don't even know if they're really going to get out of the first round. I think that's the panic around Tibbs and him being the scapegoat. But if you're a Knicks fan, you're thinking to yourself like, yo, this has got to be the year. And I think if they don't do it, or if there's a disappointment, first round exit, second round exit, he might be out the door, which is I think the first step to the dismantling of the Knicks golden era right now.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a shame, but I think you're right.
Any last words, fellas?
I'm good. Sharif, thanks for jumping on with us, bro.
Wow.
Love shooting the shit with you down in the basement of the Barclays. It's been a tough season, but I feel like we've all kind of, us and the other writers, we've come together to get through it all. So appreciate you down there. Appreciate you jumping on for us, especially for as long as you did today. We really let it rip tonight, but it was a good time. So thanks again.
Of course, man. I'm always happy to talk ball, and I know, you know, there's a lot to talk about with the Nets, and it's funny because it feels like at the same time there isn't a lot to talk about. But no, it's definitely cool to, you know, especially because we chop it up whenever we're trying to make it through the season, or, you know, we come out of our press conference and we're like, all right, what's there to talk about? So no, but in all seriousness, Colin, Pooch, I appreciate you guys for having me on. We can talk some ball and, you know, kid around a little bit and get some analogies while we're at it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Look, this was absolutely a diehard Nets fans starred podcast. Like this was a Nets centric podcast. Sharif, we can't thank you enough for coming on. Anything you want to plug away?
Not much. Just, you know, again, editor of Nets Wire for USA Today Sports. Please check me out. You know, I try to keep up with Colin here with putting out some fire on the Nets, if I can call it that. But yeah, it's all I got to plug. And, you know, I'm pretty sure you guys will put my Twitter handle at Sharif-Keaton, but that's all I got. But again, thank you for having me on.
Nets fans, NBA fans, follow this man. Hard-working dude. He's at Barclays Center every single game. And God bless his soul, he's got to spend a lot of time with Colin. Just kidding, Colin. We love you, Colin. We love you, Sharif. For the rest of you that tuned in live, we thank you for your support, as always, on the Brooklyn Pod. We can't thank you enough. If Simon, Netstradamus, and others that were in here. For the rest of you that sent in questions, thank you for your support again. And if you want to follow us at The Brooklyn Pod on X, on Twitter, Instagram. Sorry, X, Twitter, Instagram. Anything else, Colin? TikTok? It's at The Brooklyn Pod. And if you want to email us any questions, concerns, complaints about the way that I look or the way that Colin looks, just email us at thebrooklynpod@gmail.com. That's thebrooklynpod@gmail.com. See you in 2 weeks.
Peace, everybody.